The stars above Xylar Prime shimmered like a million diamonds scattered across black velvet. From orbit, the planet looked calm and peaceful, a world of towering crystal cities and silver oceans. But within its capital, tension hung thick like fog. The Zaran Empire, known for its vast fleets and centuries of wisdom, was shaken. Its queen, Lysera, lay gravely ill, a condition that no technology or medicine could cure. In the heart of the palace, a giant chamber stretched high, with walls carved from pure luminescent stone. The Zaran queen lay on a dais of soft light, her massive frame regal even in weakness. Her scales, once bright and unyielding, were dulled, and her eyes, usually sharp like blades, were clouded with fatigue. Around her, advisors and physicians moved like shadows, whispering in hurried tones. Lysera's voice, though faint, carried the weight of authority. "Bring me the human," she said. The room fell silent. Her advisors exchanged shocked glances. "The human, Your Majesty?" one of them asked. A tall Zaran with copper-toned scales and long, delicate limbs. "Are you certain? Humans are unpredictable. They are fragile." Lysera's eyes flickered with a spark of the old fire. "I am certain. Bring Captain Elias Kane. Only he can help me finish what I must." A murmur ran through the room. Humans were known to the Zirans as clever, yes, but also untested in the ways of the galaxy's great empires. No human had ever been invited to the Queen's private chambers. Many saw it as foolish. Some whispered it might even be dangerous. But Lysera, even in sickness, was known for wisdom that surpassed her empire. Her choice was final. Far away, aboard the human diplomatic cruiser Aurora's Light, Captain Elias Kane sat in his cabin, reviewing data on the Ziran Empire. He was tall and lean, with a calm demeanor that hid a sharp mind. His eyes, dark and thoughtful, scanned the notes of alien history, treaties, and warnings. Humans had only recently entered galactic diplomacy, and the Zarans were one of the first advanced civilizations they contacted. The ship's intercom beeped. "Captain Kane, the Ziran Queen requests your presence immediately," the voice said. Elias's brow furrowed. He had expected formal meetings, negotiations, perhaps even demonstrations of technology. But a personal summons from the Queen herself? That was unprecedented. Elias straightened. "Understood," he said. A mix of curiosity and unease stirred within him. He knew humans were respected for their ingenuity, but this felt different. The journey to the Queen's palace ship was unlike anything Elias had experienced. The vessel was massive, orbiting Xylar Prime like a jewel in the sky. Its structure shimmered with energy fields that protected it from both the planet's atmosphere and potential attacks. Elias could see the enormity of the palace inside. Towers of glass-like material, corridors lined with soft glowing crystals, and guards whose movements were precise and fluid. He was greeted by a senior Zaran, a female named Talira, who exuded authority and calm. "Captain Kane, the Queen awaits you. Please, follow me," she said. Her voice had a musical quality, but carried an unspoken warning. One false move could be fatal. Elias followed, noting the subtle security measures everywhere. He was allowed to carry nothing more than a communicator and a small utility device. His heart raced not from fear, but anticipation. This was history in the making. He entered the chamber slowly. The Zaran Queen lay upon her dais, surrounded by soft light that made her enormous figure seem both majestic and fragile. Her scales, mottled in gold and deep green, reflected the light, and her eyes, despite their cloudiness, studied him with piercing clarity. "Captain Elias Kane," she said, her voice low but commanding. "You are here because I have no other choice." Elias bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, It is an honor to meet you. Lysera's eyes softened for a moment. Honor? She asked. Perhaps, but you are more than that. You are a human. I have observed your species for decades. Your curiosity, your determination, your will to survive even in impossible conditions. It is remarkable. Elias felt a mixture of pride and confusion. I don't fully understand, Your Majesty. Why me? The Queen sighed, a sound that seemed almost like the wind through crystal spires. I am dying. My time ends soon. But before I go, I must ensure something crucial. That the Zeran Empire does not falter in the face of the coming storm. And I cannot do it alone. I need someone who sees the universe differently. Someone unbound by centuries of tradition. I need a human. Elias blinked. A human? You trust a single human with this? Lysera's gaze sharpened. Not trust. Understand. Humans are unpredictable, yes. But that unpredictability is a strength. They see solutions where we see only problems. They create where we hesitate. That is why I requested you. Elias swallowed. The weight of her words settled on him. This was no longer just a diplomatic mission. This was survival. Not just for one species, but for the galaxy. Over the next few hours, Elias and the Queen spoke at length. She shared visions of possible conflicts, of energy storms that could devastate entire star systems, and of ancient devices left behind by the founders of the Zeran Empire. These devices controlled energy flows on a planetary scale, but many had become unstable with age. One such device, Lysera explained, threatened to collapse Xylar Prime itself, if not stabilized. This is why I requested you, Lysera said. Your mind works differently. You will see patterns and solutions we cannot. If I am to leave this world safely, you must act. Elias nodded slowly. I will do my best, Your Majesty. Lysera's scales shone dimly, almost like a faint smile. Time is short, but humans can do remarkable things in short time. I have faith in you. As Elias began preparations to examine the ancient device, the Queen's advisors watched closely. Some were openly skeptical, their scaled features twisted in disapproval. Others, however, observed in silence, curious to see what a human could do that Zerans had not. Among them, whispers began. Can a human truly succeed where centuries of Zeran knowledge fail? Some feared failure. Some secretly hoped he would succeed. Elias felt their scrutiny but did not falter. He moved with quiet confidence, studying the device from every angle. Its structure was complex circuits of energy that hummed with power, delicate filaments that could snap if mishandled, and a core that seemed almost alive. But Elias saw possibilities where others saw danger. He adjusted settings with precision, tested sequences, and began to unravel the device's logic. Lysera watched him with a mix of hope and relief. Humans, you think differently. You are courageous in ways we rarely see. Elias smiled faintly. We survive by trying, Your Majesty. That is all. Outside the chamber, the palace ship continued to orbit Xylar Prime. Storms of glowing particles raced across the atmosphere below, a reminder of the energy surges threatening the planet. Inside, a bond was forming between alien queen and human captain. Though separated by species, culture, and years of history, they shared a purpose: to prevent disaster and secure the future. Lysera, weak but determined, rested against her dais, knowing that the decision to call a human something many of her kind considered foolish might be her greatest act. And Elias, aware of the responsibility he carried, prepared to face challenges unlike any he had known before. For the first time, the Queen allowed herself to believe that the future of her people, and perhaps the galaxy, could rest in human hands. The stars outside twinkled silently, as if watching the first steps of a remarkable journey. And somewhere deep in the crystal heart of Xylar Prime, destiny began to move. The chamber was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the palace ship's energy systems and the faint crackle of the ancient device Elias had begun to study. Outside, the orbiting lights of Xylar Prime shimmered against the black canvas of space, reflecting the calm before a storm that neither humans nor Zerons fully understood. Elias moved carefully through the chamber, observing the device. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Delicate filaments of glowing energy woven like a web across a metallic lattice, circuits that pulsed in colors he could not name, and a core that seemed to breathe in rhythm with the planet below. It was as if the device itself was alive. Lysera, despite her frail state, watched him closely. "Do you understand it?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Elias paused, his fingers hovering over the energy circuits. "Not completely," he admitted, "but I can see how it works. The energy patterns are unusual. They're almost organic." The Queen's eyes narrowed, a flicker of approval in them. "Organic," she repeated. "Yes, that is why most Zerans cannot control it. They see only mechanics. You see life." Elias felt a spark of pride. Humans had a way of thinking differently, of seeing possibilities where others saw obstacles. But he knew he had to be careful. One wrong move could destroy the device or the planet. "I'll need time," he said, "and access to all your data. Every recording, every observation your scientists have made. If I'm going to help, I need the full picture." Lysera nodded. "You shall have it, but time is limited. My health is failing faster than I expected. You must act before it is too late." Over the next few days, Elias began working closely with the Queen. She shared her knowledge of the device, her observations of Xylar Prime's energy patterns, and the hidden dangers that had been neglected for centuries. Though she was weak, she was sharp, guiding Elias through complex procedures, pointing out patterns he might otherwise miss. "What makes humans different," she explained one evening, "is your courage to try. You take risks. You improvise. That is what I need now. No Zeron could act this quickly, not even with all their centuries of experience." Elias smiled faintly. "We survive by trying, even when the odds are against us." Her gaze softened. "Yes, that is why I chose you." As Elias worked, he began to notice something unexpected. The Queen, despite her age and illness, had a sense of humor, a wit that shone through even in her weakest moments. She would make dry comments about the palace staff, or tease him gently about his human habits. At first, Elias was cautious, unsure if such informality was appropriate. But he realized that her humor was a tool, something that reminded them both that even in the face of danger, they were alive. One evening, as the palace ship orbited a glowing storm on the planet below, Elias laughed softly. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he asked. Lysera's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps, but mostly, I am testing you. I want to see if you can keep your composure, if you can handle pressure, confusion, uncertainty. Humans, you thrive under such conditions. Zerans, we often crumble." Elias nodded. "I've learned that the harder the challenge, the more we grow." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "Yes, that is why you are here." It wasn't just the work that bound them. Elias began to notice the loneliness in Lysera, the weight of millennia pressing on her like an invisible burden. She had ruled the Zeron Empire for centuries, seen countless wars, negotiated peace, and survived betrayals. And now, in her final days, she faced mortality alone. Elias did not pity her. But he understood. Humans had their own ways of comforting one another, of showing empathy. Sometimes it was in words, sometimes in silence. He learned to sit beside her without speaking, simply observing, giving her the space to rest, yet showing her that she was not alone. "You understand more than I expected," she said quietly one night. "I expected a human to be clever, resourceful, but not gentle." Elias blinked. "Gentle? That's not usually how I'm described." Her weak chuckle echoed through the chamber. "Humans are unpredictable. You see danger and opportunity, courage and compassion, all at once. That is rare. That is why you are here." But not all Zirans were pleased with the human's presence. Rumors began to spread among the palace staff. Some believed Elias was too reckless, too inexperienced. Others worried that his influence over the queen could weaken the empire's traditions. Secret meetings took place in shadowed corridors. Whispers filled the palace ship. "Thanks for watching," and that menace for Sonning. Yet Elias remained focused. He worked with the device tirelessly, mapping its energy circuits, testing sequences, and noting anomalies. The more he studied, the more he realized that this machine was not simply a tool. It was a guardian of the planet itself, a delicate balance of energy that, if mishandled, could devastate Xylar Prime. One afternoon, as Elias adjusted a filament that hummed softly in the chamber, the device surged with energy, lighting the room in a dazzling display. He froze, holding his breath, waiting for a failure that never came. The queen watched him, eyes gleaming with pride. "You did well," she said. "Your hands are steady. Your mind is quick. Gerans, we would have failed here. You succeeded where we could not." Elias exhaled slowly. "It's not just me. You guided me. Without your insight, I would be lost." Lysera smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but your courage, your insight, your willingness to act, that is uniquely human. That is why I chose you." As days passed, their bond deepened. They began to trust each other, a rare thing between species that had little shared history. Elias learned about the Queen's visions, the threats she foresaw, and the hidden dangers of Xylar Prime. He saw the weight of her leadership, the centuries of decisions that shaped an empire, and the loneliness that came with power. In return, he shared stories of humanity not to boast, but to help her understand a species she had long observed from afar. He told her of human cities, their struggles, their victories, and the way they supported each other in times of crisis. Lysera listened intently, fascinated by a species that seemed small yet capable of astonishing courage. "You humans," she said one evening, "are remarkable. You live for such a short time, yet you achieve so much. You laugh. You fight. You create, even when the odds are against you." Elias nodded. "That is what we do. We survive. We try. We learn." The Queen's eyes, clouded with illness, glimmered faintly. It was during one of these quiet evenings that an alert sounded through the palace ship. A security breach. Minor but unusual. Elias moved quickly, guided by instincts honed through years of human training. He found a small group of Ziran operatives trying to access restricted data. At first, they saw him as a threat, but Elias did not raise his weapon. Instead, he used strategy, reasoning, and calm confidence to convince them to stand down. When he returned to the Queen, she was waiting. "You handled that well," she said. "Zarans trust order. You trust logic and intuition. That is a rare combination. That is why you survive." Elias smiled. "I just try to understand the situation before acting." She nodded slowly. "And that is why I believe in humans. That is why I chose you." As the days continued, Elias and Lysera worked in tandem. She guided. He executed. She observed. he experimented. They were an unlikely team, alien and human, strength and ingenuity combined. And though the weight of the task pressed upon them, they found moments of quiet laughter, of shared wonder at the mysteries of the universe. The Pallas ship continued its orbit around Xylar Prime, its lights casting shadows across the planet's crystal cities. Outside, storms of energy swirled, but inside, a bond was forming that neither species had expected. A bond of trust, respect, and mutual admiration. Elias understood now why the Queen had chosen him. It was not just his skill. It was not just his courage. It was his humanity. His ability to see, to act, to care, and to endure. And as he prepared for the challenges to come, he felt a growing certainty. Together, human and Zeron, they might just change the fate of the galaxy. The stars outside sparkled, silent witnesses to a friendship forming against impossible odds. And somewhere deep in the heart of the Pallas ship, the first steps of a remarkable partnership were taking root, ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. The soft hum of the Pallas ship's energy systems was the only sound as Elias Kane worked late into the Zeran night cycle. His fingers traced the glowing filaments of the ancient device, each one vibrating with unseen power. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Every day, he learned more, yet the full picture remained elusive. Lysera watched him quietly from her dais, her massive form illuminated by the soft light. She was weaker now, her breathing slow, but her mind remained sharp. She knew her time was short, and the secret she had guarded for centuries weighed heavier on her heart than ever. "Elias," she said softly, "there is something you must know, something I have kept hidden from my people for a long time." Elias paused, looking up. "Anything, Your Majesty. You can trust me." The Queen's eyes glimmered faintly. "Centuries ago, the Zerans. We made a terrible mistake. We destroyed a human colony in the outer systems. It was an accident, a miscalculation. But still, many lives were lost." Elias's stomach tightened. He had heard of the Zerans' power, their wars, and their reach. He had learned already that understanding came first, not anger. "I have observed your species ever since," Lysera continued. "I have watched humanity grow, struggle, and survive. I have seen courage in the smallest acts, intelligence in the most unlikely places, and hope where no one else expected it. And now, in my final days, I want to ensure that humans survive, even if the Zeran Empire collapses after I am gone." Elias swallowed. He had expected to help the Queen with her device, perhaps to stabilize energy patterns, but he had not expected this level of trust. I'll do everything I can," he said quietly. Lysera inclined her head. "I know you will. That is why I chose you. There is more at stake than just my life or this device. There are currents in the galaxy, forces that could unravel everything. You must see them as I do." Over the next few days, Elias worked not just with the device, but with the Queen herself. She guided him through the history of her empire, the secrets of her people, and the technology that humans had yet to understand. She explained how certain energy currents from dying stars could destabilize entire planets, and how ancient devices like the one they worked on acted as guardians against these forces. "It is delicate," Lysera said one evening, "because it is alive in a way we cannot fully control. It responds to thought, to intention, to emotion. That is why only a human, one who can act with heart and mind together, can work with it." Elias nodded. "It's almost like it chooses the person, not the other way around." "Yes," the Queen whispered, "and it has chosen you." The bond between human and alien deepened during these long hours. Elias learned about her fears, her regrets, and her dreams for the future. Lysera learned about humans, their resilience, their ingenuity, and their capacity for courage. They began to trust each other in ways neither had anticipated. Yet, trust was not universal. Whispers in the palace corridors grew louder. Some Gerans were uneasy with Elias's growing influence. Others feared what the queen was attempting by involving a human in the fate of their empire. One evening, Talira, the senior advisor, approached Elias privately. "Captain Kane," she said cautiously, "many of my people do not understand why you are here. They say it is reckless to trust a human with these matters." Elias studied her calmly. "I understand their concern. But I also understand that the Queen has judged the situation. I do not act alone. I work with her guidance. If we succeed, it benefits all of you." Talira nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Perhaps, but there are those who may not wait to see the result. They may act before then." Elias considered her warning. He knew that patience would be as important as skill. The next steps would require careful planning and trust, not just in his abilities, but in the Queen's vision. One evening, as the artificial twilight of the palace ship bathed the chamber in warm light, Lysera shared a story that few had ever heard. "Long ago, when I first became queen, I was told humans were weak, unworthy of consideration. I believed them dangerous, incapable of leadership, until I observed them closely. They survived situations I thought impossible. They solved problems we could not. And I realized then that strength is not only in power, but in courage, in ingenuity, in the will to continue, despite adversity." Elias listened intently. That is why you see humanity as valuable?" "Yes," she replied, "and why I asked for you. Not because humans are strong in the traditional sense, but because you have qualities that even my people sometimes lack. Hope, flexibility, and the ability to act without centuries of hesitation." Elias felt a quiet pride. He knew humans were imperfect, but they had a spark that often turned impossible situations into victories. And now, that spark was being recognized by one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful beings. But the challenges were only beginning. One morning, the palace ship's security systems detected anomalies in the energy patterns of the device. Elias rushed to the chamber, finding the filaments flickering erratically, pulses of energy surging unpredictably. "It's destabilizing," he muttered, studying the device. "If this continues, it could overload and destroy the planetary core." Lysera, despite her weakness, moved closer to examine the readings. "Yes, I feared this might happen. It responds to external currents we cannot control. That is why I needed you, human. You must act fast." Elias's mind raced. He examined every filament, every pulse, looking for the pattern. Then, he noticed something the Queen had not. A small resonance in the energy field. Something subtle, almost hidden. "I see it," he said. "There's a sequence, a rhythm. If I align the pulses, it should stabilize." Lysera's eyes widened. "You see it?" With careful precision, Elias adjusted the device, following the hidden rhythm. The surges gradually calmed, the filaments glowing steadily once more. The Queen exhaled slowly, relief evident even in her weakened frame. "You did it," she whispered. "You have done what no Zeran could." Elias smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me. You guided me every step of the way." Lysera inclined her head. "Perhaps, but your courage, your vision, your willingness to act, that is uniquely human. That is why I chose you." Over the following days, Elias learned even more about the Queen's past. She spoke of wars fought long ago, of alliances formed and broken, and of the mistakes that had haunted her for centuries. She confessed that she had once trusted only Gerans to carry her plans, only to discover that their loyalty was not enough. "I realized then," she said, "that I needed someone outside our world, someone who could think differently, act without the weight of tradition, and see possibilities we cannot. I needed a human." Elias reflected on her words. Humans were often underestimated, considered fragile or inexperienced. Yet time and again, they had overcome obstacles through ingenuity, courage, and resilience. And now, he was living proof of that truth, guiding an empire through its greatest challenge alongside one of the galaxy's oldest rulers. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. They shared moments of quiet conversation, laughter, and reflection. Elias learned not just about the device, but about leadership, sacrifice, and vision. Lizera saw not just skill in Elias, but the heart and determination of humanity, qualities she had admired from afar for centuries. But even as trust grew, so did the danger. Certain factions within the palace whispered of betrayal, of a human influencing the fate of the empire. Elias knew he had to remain vigilant. Skill alone would not be enough. He would need diplomacy, courage, and insight to navigate the treacherous currents of Xeron politics. One evening, as Elias adjusted the device for another sequence, the Queen spoke softly. "Elias, you have seen much of the Empire, much of its strengths and its flaws. But there is one truth I must share, something that could change everything you believe about this galaxy." Elias looked up, alert. "What is it, Your Majesty?" Lysera's gaze softened. Yet it held the weight of centuries. "There are forces beyond our understanding, currents that shape the fates of stars and civilizations. Some are predictable, some are not. But they will challenge all that you know, and when the time comes, you must act not as a human, not as a Xeran, but as someone who sees the truth and has the courage to follow it." Elias nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll do what is needed." The Queen's eyes glimmered faintly. "I have faith in you. You are human, and that is more powerful than you know." Outside the palace ship, Xylar Prime rotated silently beneath the stars. The universe was vast, mysterious, and unpredictable. Inside, human and Queen prepared together, facing challenges that would test courage, intellect, and the bond between species. And in that quiet, suspended moment, Elias Kane realized something profound. Being human was not a weakness. It was a strength the galaxy had yet to understand. And as the palace ship glided through orbit, the first signs of a storm, both in energy and in politics, began to stir. Elias and Lysera would face it together, their unlikely bond now the key to the fate of an empire, and perhaps much more. The galaxy waited, silent and watchful, as a human prepared to do what no one thought possible. The corridors of the palace ship were alive with whispers. Every hum of energy, every pulse of light, seemed to carry rumors faster than the ship could orbit Xylar Prime. Some Xerans were still unsure of Elias Kane's presence. To them, a human working so closely with the Queen was reckless, perhaps even dangerous. Elias walked the halls with measured calm. He could feel the tension, sense it in the careful glances of guards, in the whispers behind closed doors. He had expected suspicion, but this was more than that. Some Xerans saw him as a threat, an outsider interfering with centuries of tradition. Others saw him as a curiosity, a fleeting experiment of the Queen's imagination. He paused outside the chamber, where the Queen rested on her dais, her breathing shallow. Lysera looked up at him, a faint smile on her scaled lips. "They are afraid of change," she said softly. "They do not understand what humans can do." Elias nodded. "Then we must show them." The first incident came that very night. A squad of Xeran guards attempted to access the device room without authorization. Their leader, a tall, copper-scaled warrior named Varek, stepped forward with a voice that brooked no argument. "This human has no place here," he said. "The Queen's health is failing. She should not be trusted to make these decisions alone." Elias stepped forward calmly. "I am here with the Queen's permission," he said, "and I am helping stabilize the device that protects this planet. If you interfere, you risk destroying it and everyone on it." Varek's eyes narrowed, but Elias did not back down. He had learned early on that Zerans respected confidence and clarity, even when it came from a human. "Step aside," Elias said, voice steady. "I do not wish to fight, but I will act to protect the Queen and the planet." After tense moments, Varek signaled his squad to stand down. Elias turned to the device, adjusting its energy filaments carefully, and the surges began to calm. The guards watched, silently impressed despite themselves. Lysera exhaled softly. "You see, Elias? Even now you prove your worth." Elias shook his head. "It is not worth proving. It is just necessary." The next day, a delegation of high-ranking Zeran advisors arrived at the chamber. Their faces were stern, their eyes skeptical. "Captain Kane," one of them began, "we respect your skills, but this collaboration with a human threatens the traditions of our empire. We demand that you step aside." Elias remained calm. "With respect, the Queen has chosen me for this task. My skills complement hers. If we succeed, the empire benefits. If we fail, countless lives are at risk. That is the choice we face." The advisors murmured, some outraged, some thoughtful. Lysera intervened. "Enough," she said firmly. "Captain Kane is here because I requested him. His presence is my decision, and it will remain so. If you wish to serve this empire, you will do so without questioning my judgment." A tense silence followed. Even the strongest skeptics did not challenge the Queen's command. Elias glanced at her, silently grateful. Her trust empowered him more than any weapon or tool ever could. As the palace ship orbited Xylar Prime, Elias continued his work. The device hummed under his touch, its energy filaments glowing steadily. But something was wrong. He noticed faint disruptions, tiny pulses of interference that threatened to destabilize the system. He adjusted, rechecked, and recalculated. Hours passed, and his concentration never wavered. Lysera watched him, noting how he did not panic, how he used calm observation to solve a problem that might have overwhelmed even the most experienced Zeran. "You are remarkable," she whispered. "Even in chaos, you find clarity. Humans, you are extraordinary." Elias smiled faintly. "I just try to see the problem clearly before acting. That is all." The Queen nodded. "And that is why I trusted you." But the peace was short-lived. A small faction of Zerans, unwilling to accept human influence, devised a plan to seize control of the device. Their goal was simple: remove Elias, secure the Queen, and assert their authority over the Empire. One evening, alarms blared through the palace ship. Red lights flashed, and the energy hum of the device grew erratic. Elias rushed to the chamber, finding several operatives attempting to override the control panels. Without hesitation, he acted. Using his knowledge of the device, he initiated a containment protocol that locked the filaments into stable patterns. The operatives paused, frustrated. Elias did not attack, but his presence alone, combined with his precise handling of the device, forced them to retreat. Lysera, weak but alert, observed the scene. "You handled that perfectly. Your courage and calm. That is why humans endure. That is why you survive." Elias shook his head. "I do not survive alone. You guided me. Without your insight, I could have failed." The Queen's eyes glimmered with pride. "Perhaps, But your actions, your decisions, they are uniquely human. That is why I chose you. After the incident, the palace ship was tense. Security increased, patrols doubled, and the faction that opposed Elias watched from the shadows. Yet, the queen remained determined. You see, Elias, she said softly, they fear change. They fear that a human could succeed where they might fail. But you do not fear. You act. That is the difference. Elias nodded. I act because I must. That is all. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly. Elias studied the device, mapping energy flows, adjusting filaments, and analyzing sequences. The queen provided insight, teaching him to anticipate disruptions and recognize hidden patterns. Together, they discovered a subtle resonance in the device, something almost alive, responding to thought, intention, and even emotion. This is why I needed you, Lysera said one evening. No Jaren could perceive it this way. Only a human, unbound by centuries of tradition, could understand. Elias glanced at her. It is not just skill, Your Majesty. It is perspective. Humans see differently because we must, not because we are better. But sometimes, that is enough. The queen's eyes softened. And that is enough to change the fate of an empire. The political tension continued to rise. The faction that opposed Elias grew bolder, attempting subtle sabotage, delaying his access to data, spreading misinformation, and questioning every decision he made. But Elias remained steady. He approached each challenge as he had all others, with careful thought, courage, and an unshakable belief in his purpose. One night, as he recalibrated the device, a hidden panel opened unexpectedly, revealing a sequence of controls the queen had not yet shown him. Elias studied it quickly, realizing that these adjustments could stabilize the device permanently, but it would require precise timing, flawless execution, and courage beyond anything he had faced so far. He glanced at Lysera. This could work, he said, but it is risky. One mistake, and it could destabilize everything. The queen smiled faintly. Then, risk it. Trust yourself, as I trust you. Elias took a deep breath. He had faced danger before, but this was different. The device was alive in a way that demanded respect, intuition, and courage. Yet he felt a calm certainty. Humans survived impossible odds every day. And now, he would do it again, not just for himself, but for the queen, for the empire, and for a future that might otherwise be lost. The night passed in tense focus. Elias adjusted every filament, measured every pulse, and synchronized the device to the hidden resonance. The filaments glowed brighter, energy humming in harmony with the planet below. The palace ship vibrated softly as the system stabilized. Lysera, weak but smiling, whispered. Elias exhaled slowly. It was not just me. You guided me every step. Without your insight, none of this would be possible. The queen's eyes sparkled faintly. Perhaps, but your courage, your insight, your ability to act under pressure, that is uniquely human. That is why I chose you. Outside the palace ship, Xylar Prime rotated silently beneath the stars, its energy currents steady once more. Within the ship, a human had proven his worth not only through skill, but through courage, perspective, and resilience, the very traits that had earned humanity its place in the galaxy. And as alarms faded and calm returned, both Elias and Lysera understood something profound. The galaxy was changing, and a human mind, brave, clever, and unyielding, had become central to that change. The chamber was quiet. Outside, Xylar Prime rotated beneath the palace ship, its crystal cities glowing softly in the orbiting light. The energy currents, once chaotic and dangerous, were now stable. The ancient device hummed steadily, its filaments glowing in a harmonious rhythm. Lysera lay on her dais, her breathing shallow. The queen's body, strong and formidable for centuries, had grown frail. The work with the device had required energy beyond what her weakened form could sustain. But her eyes were clear, filled with purpose and trust. Elias Kane stood beside her, quietly observing the patterns of the device, ensuring everything remained stable. He had worked tirelessly, guided by both his own intuition and the Queen's centuries of wisdom. He knew this moment would test more than his skills, it would test his courage, resolve, and heart. "Elias," Lysera whispered, her voice faint but firm, "the Empire is safe. For now, you have done what I hoped no one could. You have saved my people and Xylar Prime." Elias bowed slightly. "It was your guidance, Your Majesty. Without you, I could never have done this alone." Lysera smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering with pride. "Perhaps, but you acted with courage, with creativity, with humanity. That is why I trusted you. That is why I chose you." Over the next few hours, the Queen shared more of her final instructions. She entrusted Elias with her private archives, her records of the Empire, and the hidden knowledge of the ancient devices. The Queen knew her death would leave the Jaren Empire without guidance, and she wanted to ensure that humanity would have a role in preserving stability. "You are more than a human, Elias," she said. "You are the bridge between our worlds. You must ensure that humans and Zarans learn from each other, grow together, and survive the challenges to come." Elias nodded. "I will honor your trust. I will do everything I can." Her eyes softened. "I know you will. That is why I asked for you. Not for your strength, not for your skill, but because your mind, your heart, and your courage are the qualities we all need." But even as calm returned to the chamber, tension remained elsewhere. The faction that had opposed Elias, though temporarily deterred, had not disappeared. They whispered, plotted, and watched from the shadows. Some sought to undermine the Queen's wishes after her passing. Others feared the humans' influence, believing that tradition must be preserved above all else. Elias understood that this was not over. Protecting the Queen's legacy required more than stabilizing. A device, it required diplomacy, patience, and vigilance. He began meeting with the Empire's leaders, explaining the necessity of collaboration and trust. Some were skeptical, some grudgingly respectful, but all had to acknowledge the human who had saved their planet. The final hours of Lysera's life were spent quietly, in conversation with Elias. She shared memories of wars she had led, alliances she had formed, and mistakes she had made. She spoke of her regrets, her hopes, and her belief that humanity could offer something rare to the galaxy. "You humans," she whispered, "you laugh in the face of danger. You fight even when defeat seems certain. You create solutions from nothing. That is why you endure. That is why you can change the galaxy." Elias listened quietly. He had never felt such responsibility, such weight on his shoulders, and yet he did not flinch. Humans thrived in adversity. Humans endured, and now he would carry that legacy forward. As Lysera's breathing slowed, she reached out a clawed hand. Elias took it gently. "You have been my greatest hope, Elias Kane," she whispered. "My final wish is in your hands." "I understand, Your Majesty," Elias said softly. "I will honor you. I promise." The Queen's eyes closed slowly. The chamber was silent, except for the hum of the device, steady and strong. Elias remained beside her, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down, yet also a strange calm. She had trusted him. She had believed in humanity. And now, he carried her legacy forward. In the following days, Elias moved carefully to stabilize not only the device but also the empire. He worked with Geron leaders, mediating disputes, explaining the Queen's decisions, and demonstrating through action what he had proven through the device. Humans were capable, resourceful, and trustworthy. Gradually, the whispers of dissent faded. Leaders, who had opposed him, began to see that his insights, courage, and adaptability were invaluable. A single human, acting with wisdom and courage, had preserved an entire planetary system. Elias became a symbol not only of his species, but of humanity itself. The Zerans began to recognize that humans could act decisively, think creatively, and inspire trust in ways that no other species had. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now that perception was changing forever. But Elias did not act for fame. He acted because it was necessary. He worked tirelessly, often in silence, stabilizing the device, teaching Zerans to approach problems differently, and ensuring that Lysera's final wishes were honored. He also reflected on what he had learned from her. Leadership, he realized, was not just about power. It was about vision, courage, and trust. The Queen had entrusted him with more than technology. She had entrusted him with the future of the Empire and the bridge between two species. And he would not fail. Months passed. Xylar Prime thrived. The device maintained carefully under Elias's guidance. Humans and Gerons began working together, sharing knowledge, and learning from one another. Elias trained a select group of Zerans in human problem-solving methods, improvisation, and risk assessment. The Empire, once rigid and cautious, began to grow more adaptable. Stories of Elias Kane spread throughout the galaxy. To humans, he was proof that courage, intelligence, and determination could make a difference on a cosmic scale. To Zerans, he was a lesson. Even the smallest species could hold the key to survival, if guided by heart and mind together. One evening, Elias walked alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. He thought of Lysera, her wisdom, her courage, and her trust in him. He felt a quiet determination rise within him. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and possibilities. Humanity had only just begun to make its mark. But he also knew this. Humans were ready. They had resilience, creativity, and courage, the qualities that could shape the future, even in the most challenging circumstances. And he, Elias Kane, would ensure that the legacy of the sick alien queen and the trust she had placed in humanity would endure. The stars twinkled silently, watching a human who had changed the fate of an empire, who had bridged worlds, and who carried the promise of humanity into the vast unknown. In that moment, Elias understood something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were pioneers, leaders, and a force that could inspire the galaxy itself. And with that thought, he turned from the observation deck, ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that humanity had earned its place among the stars. The legacy of the Queen lived on, not in fear, not in technology, but in the courage, creativity, and unyielding spirit of a human who had risen to meet the impossible.